When I first saw this film for the third time, I didn't actually have any intention of making a video on it, and I still don't. Alright, goodbye. Seriously though, I didn't, and I wasn't going to make this video, which when uttered by the modern day serfs, it's YouTubers, usually implies that they were going to make a video for something else, and moral reasons, I don't want to make this video, or because they're above it, because it's been done to death. And by looking at YouTube, there have been several videos covering this movie. My reasoning for not considering it a video topic was that it didn't actually have anything to do with the sphere of YouTube, because I didn't really think of it as the movie that stars Addison Rae, since I can't actually recognize her by face. I didn't know this was her. I saw this movie like twice. No clue who it was. Maybe I was just distracted by Matthew Lillard. They're trashing the data flow, man! Hack the planet! Great movie. Fucking amazing. If you have a little something called a functioning brain, insert joke about my audience, you may question why anyone would voluntarily watch this movie with no intention to create a video. And the answer is twofold. The first part is, it's actually a remake of She's All That, a movie I thoroughly enjoy, despite its many faults. And the second part is, I have a complete lack of self-respect. Hence the shirt. Speaking of videos, transition. Today's sponsor, and for the past few months, Boxu. You already know what's up, or you kind of should at this point. Boxu, Japanese snack box, drinks, amazing. Doesn't this man look sweet? Guess what? He also makes them. That was a great joke. They're constantly rotating through monthly themes that dictate the contents of the box that you receive at your doorstep. You may not know what the sweets are going to be, but what you can be certain of are the snacks are from all around Japan. Personally, the drinks are my favorite part because they're always a unique flavor. Seriously, apparently riced tea is just illegal where I live. I can't find it. And hey, if you don't know what the food is, which is entirely possible if you can't speak Japanese, you can just use the included booklet to learn more about it. Or when in doubt, just eat it. What, are the police gonna stop you? Just eat it, dude. With Christmas coming up, it's also the perfect time to give someone you know a subscription to the service, using my code Kappa10 to get 10% off your subscription, with the added bonus of, if you are in America, which is like 80 to 90% of you, subscribing before the end of December automatically gives you a chance to win a pair of tickets to Japan, which you can learn more about in the description below. Now, I assume at least some of you are aware of He's All That, thanks to the aforementioned videos by people like Danny Gonzalez, whose video has 4.4 million views, and I have to assume we have a bit of audience overlap. He's white, I'm white, he's a man, I've killed a man. Easy to confuse us is what I'm saying. That and the fact it's a remake of a certified hood classic. Don't tell anyone I said that. Anyway, thanks to those factors, I doubt you'll have a difficult time grasping the concept of this movie, which admittedly is very strange. No, the difficult part to understand is the decision to make it at all. Why? Remakes of movies are more difficult to justify than remakes or remasters of other things, like games. Depending on how old the original is, there are just considerable benefits to remaking the game based simply off the fact technology gets better as time continues to march us towards our eventual demise. And as a result, you can make the game look considerably better with far fewer resources and talent, and we all die alone. Now, while this does make it even more depressingly hilarious when simple parts of the process go catastrophically wrong, most of the time, it's pretty inoffensive and can yield some decent results. Films, on the other hand, thanks to the fucking wizards that digitize 35 and 70mm film, a lot of movies don't really age that badly. I mean, look at this film. This was made in 1957 and it looks 100 times better than that piece of shit Jack and Jill. This raises several concerns with remaking movies if you're passionate about the original. So if you work in a film studio, no concerns. Who cares? Listen. Come in close. Guy Ritchie, movies about the English crime world, quick cuts, specific editing style. Aladdin. I mean, how could we not have thought of it before? I'm going to say preemptively that I will be making a lot of comparisons to the original, and in many cases that would be unfair, every movie has the right to be judged as its own product, but on the other hand, She's All That wasn't a particularly high bar to begin with, and the remake is almost exactly the same film, just flipping the genders, and not like in a clever way. To start this video at the start, the premise, also known as the inciting incident, also known as whoopsies, I boned someone else. Firstly, we have Zach Seiler and Lainey Boggs. Fucking amazing character names aside, they are the water and oil the audience gets to see turn into bread and butter, with Zach as the affable yet pretty vapid jock that ultimately discovers his heart of gold, and Lainey as the smart, passionate realist who has a habit of overthinking and has to learn not to worry about everything. Just have a little bit of fun. Now, that does seem incredibly simplistic, and that's because it was exactly what I was going for. Stop questioning me. What I have described to you is the bare minimum of what a character is in a movie centered around characters. 1, baseline characteristics that are established naturally and are easy to define. 2, those traits being pros and other traits being cons. And 3, the traits are either added, removed, or changed as a result of the story progressing. Romance movies commonly make it so that the characters become more like each other. Zach becomes more thoughtful, Lainey becomes more personable, man becomes more lobster, woman becomes more fish. The classic. Despite seeming like very basic character traits, as the film continues, we do learn more about our leads, and they gain a new sense of depth. Admittedly, it's not much. Like, not a lot at all. This isn't Midnight Mass, but it does happen. Like, it exists. I can point to it. Unlike the remake, which pretty much just sticks to the basics, the 1, 2, 3s, the ABC, D's nuts. Now we have Paget Sawyer and Cameron Queller, which attempt to produce the same feeling, yet fall considerably short. Most of the characteristics are taken directly from the original, with Paget inheriting Zach's vapidness, and Cameron taking on the pretentious artsy pieces of Lainey's character. The interesting part of the changes is what the movie doesn't change, which oddly enough are the backgrounds. Cameron has the comfortable life with a distant father like Zach, and Paget has a close relationship with their parent, with the added stress that comes from not being wealthy. In Paget's case, it's the facade of high-class living, as opposed to Lainey having more responsibilities. This is either a bold move to mix and match elements of the original to create something entirely unique, or they literally copied the script, swapped the two characters, and everything in this movie has been a colossal oversight. Because of the changes or lack of changes, there is a domino effect that takes place, and it starts pretty early. Zach and Paget are on top of the school hierarchy, they're popular, they're dating someone popular, until it's all swept under them, like a rug or one of those obstacles from Wipeout. Zach loses his girlfriend to an even more popular and more superficial person, and Paget loses her popular boyfriend, who is apparently a high schooler, after she catches him cheating, which, as my writing team tells me, is a bit of a dick move. Zach attempts to downplay his breakup, basically saying, hey, there's nothing special about her. Given enough time, any girl that goes to the prom with me would be voted prom queen. Trying to prove that he's like the popular one, and that there's nothing special about Taylor Vaughn, that charlatan. I don't know what that really means. Paget, on the other hand, wants to do a makeover for the storyline, you know, like getting back at the person who cheated on her. That would be nice, and she wants to prove that she can do something herself to get back her sponsorship and her following on, like, I assume TikTok or Insta Dude or whatever. In the original, there's no real good person in that situation. Like, sure, Zach Seiler, great name, gets dumped for no reason, so Taylor can shag Shaggy, but Zach's reasoning behind the entire challenge is vindictive and obviously a little sexist, because at this point, he's describing the bet as if the girl is like an object, whereas Paget and her merry band of far more likable people, there's a clear-cut villain for them. Like, they're clearly in the right, which turns out to be a massive mistake and a detriment to the entire film. The biggest thing, and perhaps the only thing that holds the original together, is watching the slow growth and development of our leads, one of whom has to come to terms with the fact that they did an oopsie. They were stupid. They did something quite insulting, because when it comes down to it, fundamentally the entire concept makes one of the people involved kind of a selfish dick. It doesn't matter how many coats of paint you slather on, it's still going to be there. Playing Paget as the sympathetic underdog doesn't really work for this story. Mostly concerning the end and also the rest of it, because it creates a dynamic between the two where instead of one being too carefree and the other being too grounded, they're both just normal levels of grounded, which is what you would call a regular human. It's just that she's pretending she isn't. A decent concept, by the way, just not for this film. It's more of one of those Hallmark Christmas movies that I'm still not allowed to watch because they're just exclusive to America. Regardless, it plays out the same in both versions. They point at people, make fun of them, eventually settle on Lainey/Cameron in an unintentionally hilarious scene where small flaws are presented as like deal breakers on what is objectively an attractive human being.
Fascists!
He is a total disaster.
What an antisocial dork, as opposed to the sociable normal people who are delighted when they get assaulted. And so the movie continues, which is code for it makes another misstep. Off a bridge. Changing Paget to have different, more sane motivations than Zach, paired with Cameron's apparent seething hatred for fuckboy number 7 over here, means there isn't that much of a reason to lie about her intentions, because crucially, it's like weird. It serves as the comeuppance for Zach's previous actions where he was a significantly worse person, but like, doesn't really work for Paget. That and the challenge is different between the two, with Zach centering around it like being a woman on his arm, whereas Paget focuses almost entirely on the makeover aspect. The fact that they're dating is at times treated like it's accidental. There's no focus on it really. The lying is a necessary part of the structure of she's all that, but there's been enough changed here that it doesn't really make any sense anymore. You may start thinking now as you're falling asleep from my words, wow, you haven't mentioned anything past the first 20 minutes. And fuck off, alright? It's the first 25 minutes. And that's because I don't really have to. Apart from what I've already mentioned, not too much like changes between the two that matters anyway. For the most part, the middle section of both films is just a bunch of meet cutes back to back. Though these characters don't really develop or are ever interesting, Paget talks about her mother who works very hard to give her the best chance in life, and Cameron talks about his father who was in Sweden and his mother who was dead. Basically talking about how his parents are absent, as if those two things weren't completely obvious at this point. Where's that little scene? You know, where Lainey talks about grandma's house and the big green chair, realizing nothing's going to be the same. And Zach talks about, this picture his dad has of him where he's a kid at the zoo or something and he's wearing a Dartmouth sweatshirt. And, like, where's all like the scene where they play volleyball, man? I don't fucking know. I don't care. I don't give a shit about these characters. I couldn't care less. I will mention the original is not perfect. Far from it. It's personally, I really enjoy it and I think it's incredibly charming at times, but it's also quite inconsistent and just usually ends up being a solid to decent watch. You know, like, apparently that's too high of a fucking standard now. Jesus Christ. I am being serious. Nothing happens. Everything that doesn't work in the original super doesn't work in the remake, and it also suffers in the potentially cute or endearing parts by the simple fact of not having Rachel Lee Cook and Freddie Prinze Jr. as the lead roles, both of whom, but particularly Freddie, are almost too charismatic in every scene. Now, individually, these two aren't bad. Especially considering Addison Rae's acting experience is dangerously close to literally nothing, but none of them are like actually good. Also, their on-screen chemistry feels distant in the same way that like Pluto is distant. Some of that does come down to the editing. In certain scenes, there's just like a half a second gap of dead air before it cuts away, which is the worst amount of time because it's too long to miss it and it's too short to be funny. It's like they have like bad ping or something, like there's latency between the two. Up until this point, I've also neglected talking about how the film actually looks, which based off my research is somewhat important to a movie. And looks great. 0 notes. I will be fair here, as opposed to the opinionated asshole that I usually am, and admit that the original doesn't look particularly stunning. They both have relatively small and similar budgets, and that just doesn't have the bandwidth to make an amazing looking film, unless you're like a genius, but we're ignoring that. Comparing it to similar films of that time period, it looks pretty average, and of its time, which I'm disappointed to say is pretty much the same deal for the remake. It looks like movies that it is like. It feels like I'm watching Kissing Booth 4 or something. Everything's pretty saturated, but paired with the sleek digital feel and the fact everyone gets almost uniformly lit by 100 fluorescent lights, makes it feel surgical to me. There's basically no shadows on like anyone's face, including in the dark, under harsh lighting. It's not like bad, I just don't like it. I despise the style. I am trying to be nice, not very hard. There's not a whole lot right that this movie accomplishes. Every time it fails, it does so miserably. And when it doesn't, it's just what I expect. Like, yes, congratulations, the camera is pointed at the person talking. I'm not impressed. Right now, I'm struggling to find more stuff, so I'm just gonna start mentioning things that are like weird to me. Like, one of the Kardashians is in the film. Awesome. I love them. This movie also falls into the pitfall of being American, which means that when Paget and her mother are talking about having to worry about money and college and all that, they're doing so in a house that outclasses most things in Australia. And that's not even bringing up the camera lives in like literally a mansion. He has like a dark room that's bigger than my friend's apartments. Fucking white people, dude. Holy shit. There's also this weird fight scene. I thought I was watching Cobra Kai for a second. I don't know why this is in the film, if not like by accident. This video is just a long-winded way of saying watching this film makes me think about the original, which is considerably better and removes any reason to watch the remake. Unless you're like me, because I'm like actually crazy. I just spoke about this film for like 17 hours. What are you even doing here anymore? Speaking of, thanks for watching. Nothing really to say here. Go watch She's All That, with the caveat that this is from the late 90s, early 2000s, so it hasn't aged very well in some areas. Go watch 10 Things I Hate About You. Similar type of movie, similar style, but like actually good. Go watch Arcane. By the time this video gets released, I imagine all 3 parts will be out. Thanks for the fellas for supporting me. You can fuck off. It's fine. You can go now. I'm gonna go this way.